welcome. I'm really glad these are working now because it's, only so much I can keep projecting for. But welcome, welcome, welcome. It's lovely to have you all here in the flesh to welcome to the GrowBiz 15th, can you believe it, anniversary celebrations here in this beautiful Birnam Arts Centre. It's wonderful to have you with us, whether you're here in the room with us or you're online joining us. We really appreciate that. The tech allows us to have you all here in the same room, in a manner of speaking. We have connectivity, we hope, for the duration. That connectivity theme, by the way, might rear its head later on in discussions, just a feeling about that. Can I introduce myself properly? My name is Clare English. I used to work for BBC Radio Scotland for many years, and I was a radio presenter and did some TV work, so I've worked in politics, news and current affairs, and arts and culture, so it's lovely to be in this particular setting today. Every time, I don't know if you've seen me before at these gigs, poor Jackie always seems to want me to come to these gigs, but I think every time I come, I get more and more impressed by what I'm hearing about, what I'm seeing. I'm genuinely stunned by the innovation, the resilience, the creativity that's on show, and the ambition in the micro businesses. I had no idea that this was all happening in Scotland, and especially in rural Perthshire. So it's been quite amazing for me to learn this stuff. I come from a big city, the Central Belt, and I've said many times in the past, we could sure use what some of you guys have got here. You've got the magic sauce. So GrowBiz has a lot to be proud of. You all have a lot to be proud of. So let's celebrate that and look at the potential to do even more in the future. Now, of course, we cannot ignore the fact that you're working and you're trading in very testing times, a very difficult environment. COVID continues to cast a pall over us all. We're in uncertain times health-wise, security-wise, geopolitically, on the domestic front too, and of course, economically. It's a perfect storm, if you like, or you don't like. That's why we need to start thinking and acting differently if we want to change things for the better. You all hold so much potential in your own hands, but that latent power has to be fully understood or untapped by government. Opportunities have been missed in the past. We can't afford to throw those away right now, especially not now. It's a time for innovation, agility, and endless creativity. Cometh the hour, though, cometh the organisation, and GrowBiz, now 15 years young, has come at precisely the right time. So, let me remind you why you should all be so proud of GrowBiz and what's achieved so far. This is a relational contract that truly works, and there's plenty of evidence to show that it's touched your lives and your livelihoods. And to prove it, I got some factoids. I won't go big on them, but just to give you an idea, you probably know this already. Jackie certainly does. GrowBiz was founded way back in 2007. It supports a huge range of micro businesses and social enterprises within the Cairngorms Park area, Perth and Kinross. Oh, and it also goes to the borders and Frees Galloway, all the way up to Orkney, Shetland, and everywhere in between. And in just over the past 5 years, GrowBiz has worked with more than 2,000 enterprises. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? 2,000. And they're as diverse as you could get, a source of great pride. And check this out, GrowBiz has also enabled at least 10 new rural businesses to have started every single month. That is an achievement, and what a range. Now, ambitious it is for entrepreneurs like yourselves, and with good reason, because you are contributing impressively to the Scottish economy as well as to your own communities. You are living, working proof that you don't have to be Amazonian to be successful. In short, you may be small, but your impact is mighty. And no, rural business is not just defined by agriculture, forest, and fishery. Let's rid ourselves of that outmoded kind of way of thinking and recognise the breadth of ambition and ideas that are out there and up and running as I speak. We salute you. So I would like to say, give yourselves a huge round of applause, because this is impressive work you're doing. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. You deserve it. Now to business, and I must give a shout out though to a very impressive young entrepreneur. I don't know if Amelia is still with us. Did she go home? Yeah, Amelia! There you go. This is why I love coming to these things. I didn't even... Amelia, what did you sell me? I can't even remember what you call it. It's a shower thing? What? A shower steamer? Does anyone know what a shower steamer is? Well, I didn't. So anyway, I got one, and I'm just saying, look at the example. 5 years trading already. This is just amazing. How exciting is that, to be able to have your own business work from home, I'm guessing, most of the time, yeah, and be in a rural community. Absolutely amazing. Okay, we're going to get to business. We're going to speak to Jackie, the Grand Fromage, the CEO of GrowBiz for the past 10 years. What a fromage she is. She's a wonderful fromage. After that, we're going to hear from a local star who may be able to shed some light on what the Scottish Government think of GrowBiz's success thus far. He can also help us address some of the areas that are impeding even more success. So we'll be hearing from John Swinney, who is MSP, Deputy FM and COVID Recovery Minister. Is there anything else? Not yet. Not yet. There's going to be a Q&A session, and I would love it if you ask questions. Don't sit in your hands. Don't be shy. This is your opportunity to ask anything. John's up for it. He knows what he's in for. And after that, there could be quite a lot to digest and talk about, maybe as things wind down. Perhaps you'll take that outside of the centre. But right now, it's the Grand Fromage's time. First duty is to tee up Jackie, the GrowBiz Queen, CEO Jackie Brierton. Give her a welcome.
I've definitely not been called a fromage before, so thank you for that. Been called lots of things, not fromage. Good evening, everyone. Especially warm welcome to those of you who are connecting remotely. We know that we've got businesses from all over Scotland online watching this, hopefully, if all the checks worked okay. It's great to see so many of you here, and it's fitting that actually our first major face-to-face event is happening here in Birnam Arts, in the same place that our last big networking event face-to-face took place in January 2020, which I think you'd agree seems like a decade ago. Although we're celebrating GrowBiz's 15th birthday, I've been involved for 10 and a bit years, and I want to use this hook to talk briefly about 10 things I think are significant or important to what we're all about. You'll be pleased to know this will be a brief mention of 10 things, some of which I hope might stimulate some questions or discussion afterwards. Number one, community. Community means different things to different people, but one thing we know after the last 2 years is that community links and connections are critical to the health, well-being and economies of rural areas in Scotland. GrowBiz is proud to call itself a community-based enterprise support organisation, and our master plan is to support as many rural communities as possible to resource their own enterprise facilitation service, just like GrowBiz in the early days, but with the huge advantage of lending our 15 years of experience, knowledge and expertise to local facilitators to provide effective support and learning for small micro-rural businesses and social enterprises all over rural Scotland. Number two, rural enterprise and innovation. As Clare said, rural businesses are incredibly innovative, and its importance to Scotland's economy and well-being can't be understated. We're privileged at GrowBiz to meet new and existing rural entrepreneurs on a daily basis, like many of you in the audience. Rural entrepreneurs are invariably innovative, resilient, and committed to what they're doing. Many will stay small. That isn't a bad thing. It's a sustainable model for a strong rural economy with diverse sectors, ideas and opportunities. But we need to change the perception that rural enterprise isn't contributing proportionately to Scotland's economy and is secondary to city-based enterprise. I've made no secret of my assertion that focusing totally on a high-growth, scale-up model of economic growth is not the way forward for a lot of rural Scotland. Instead, we should be scaling deep, creating routes and local supply chains which are more likely to survive the challenges of increased costs and inflation that we're all facing. And this includes developing innovative solutions to ingrained problems, such as the dearth of social care provision in rural areas. The development of our Care and Wellbeing project, encouraging a growing network of self-employed carers to provide quality social care in rural areas, is a good example of this. And I'm delighted to confirm that we're about to start replicating this approach with partners in South Ayrshire. 3, mentoring. We never tire of promoting our GrowBiz mentoring programme, which has just been re-accredited by the Scottish Mentoring Network. We're still the only business mentoring programme with Scottish Mentoring Network's quality standard, but we don't want to be the only one. The power of mentoring changes lives, often for the mentor as well as the mentee. And we need many more people to get involved in good quality mentoring schemes across Scotland. If you're interested in making this happen, please talk to us. 4, collaboration. We collaborate with a wide range of organisations, businesses and individuals. Many of you are in the audience tonight. But sometimes the hardest sector to collaborate with is the public sector. When we were developing, or when the Advisory Council was developing the new National Strategy for Economic Transformation, this was a recurring theme: the need for public sector agencies and organisations, including the Scottish Government itself, to work better in partnership with others, particularly in the third and private sectors, to collaborate, share, and be prepared to take some of the same hits that the rest of us have to take from time to time. We're all operating in difficult times, arguably the most challenging most of us have experienced, but we'll get through them better if we can genuinely find ways of working together, being honest with each other, supporting rural economies and communities. 5, diversity. Despite steady increases in the numbers of women starting and growing businesses, they are still underrepresented across Scotland. Since its early days, at least 60% of GrowBiz's clients have been female, and we have a vibrant network of rural businesses run by women which meets monthly. But the stats are still a bit depressing. Women-owned businesses are undercapitalised compared to their male counterparts. Too many still report being patronised and discouraged by support organisations, finance providers, etc. Diversity is more than just a gender issue. We need to see more minority ethnic entrepreneurs and older people being supported to start businesses, and young people too. Our specific programme for young entrepreneurs, SEED, has recently made grants of £1,000 to 3 extraordinary business owners in their early 20s, who are all developing ambitious businesses for the future, and they have benefited from our tailored support and encouragement. We need more of this right across rural Scotland. 6, learning. As business owners, we never stop learning, and in this world of rapid technological change, we've no choice but to keep up with developments and new skills. But accessing learning and skills development when you're running a small business can be challenging. There needs to be flexibility and easy access. Our GrowBiz learning programme has greatly developed through COVID, with hundreds of remote interactive sessions on topics suggested by our clients. Everything from cash flow projecting to advanced Instagram, time management, marketing strategies, etc. When we put the stats together for this celebration, we were amazed to see that nearly 7,500 people had attended more than 570 learning, networking and mentoring events in the last 5 years. 7, inspiration. Role models, telling stories. We're inspired on a daily basis by the businesses and social enterprises we work with. Many of them work away quietly and under the radar, but their individual stories tell of perseverance, hard work and commitment. Many are grappling with health issues or juggling childcare or carer responsibilities. They are role models for those who have dreamt of being entrepreneurs but haven't yet taken the first steps. And they are inspiring to young people, helping them believe that self-employment and enterprise are valuable career choices now or in the future. This is Scotland's Year of Stories, and we're putting a collection of rural enterprise stories together, so please let us know if you'd like to be one of them. On the theme of inspiration, I'm going to pause to play a short film. This features a local rural enterprise. Some of you will know this young guy, Jamie Kunka. His unique Lonely Mountain Skis business is based close to here in Birnam. Jamie is the only ski maker in Scotland, and the film was taken and edited by one of our clients, the talented filmmaker Ewan Robinson, who's also based locally. So this is where the technical bit comes in, and I just need to work out whether I can actually play the film. But let's see how we get on.
I'm Jamie Kunka, and I make skis out of wood. think I was born in a particularly interesting time in skiing in Scotland, where I saw every year would be consistent snowfall across the Scottish mountains. And then as I turned into a teenager, that died away and it became really noticeable, this climate shift in Scotland. The idea of using a sustainable material to make skis was kind of obvious to me, because it would be awful if the skis were in any way sort of contributing to the warming of Scotland and less snow. People always think that they're going to be heavy and stiff and kind of cumbersome, but I've used wood exactly to counter those things about skis, actually. When you make a ski that's almost entirely comprised of wood, it's got like a feeling of life to it. I suppose it's like trying to rekindle the properties of the tree, you know, it's strong and flexible, which helps it stand up against wind and weather and everything. Maybe that's where the true beauty of the skis lies. It's like, maybe wood's the best thing for skis. I'd always aspired to be a kind of a one-man craftsman, harking back to old Norwegian ski makers in little sheds, steaming skis, you know. It was an enormous challenge to kind of rekindle some of these old skills in ski making. And there was hardly any literature, there was no courses you could do, so I had to learn it all by myself. And no one was doing it in Scotland, which I found totally amazing. We've got such a die-hard ski culture, but yet no one making skis. Start off with this big plank of wood, and we're going to feed it through the planer, and that'll level off both sides of it. That piece of wood is then cut into strips, which will form the laminated core of the ski. The way I design and make the insides of my skis was based on an old drawing. I think it was from the 20s. It was like an old patent by a Norwegian guy, and it was simple to make, and it was light, and it felt amazing to ski on. So they'll be turned on their side and then glued edge to edge, along with a few different other types of wood. So although the skis look as if they're almost one piece of wood, I suppose that's where the magic comes in of selecting and arranging them in a certain way. And that makes the skis feel alive rather than just lumps of plastic under your feet. So I'll send it through like maybe six, 7 times or something, until each side is down to about 2 mil and the middle is about 10. I've almost devoted kind of my existence to doing this job. I've based my whole life around it in some ways. It was quite unusual when I moved here that anyone was considering, especially if you were young, to move to the countryside to start a business. Some people kind of got it and some people totally didn't. Businessy type people didn't get it at all. It was such an amazing place, kind of surrounded by all these trees and sawmills and wood, and a lot of the time I'm quite inspired by just waking up and seeing the nature every day and seeing the mountains, and that drives my passion for making the skis as well. When you make something out of nothing, or you take an object and you turn it into something, I'm very conscious that I'm doing justice to the raw materials that I'm getting. It's taught me a lot about, if you're going to do something, you've got to have a really good justification for doing it. So when I make the skis, I know that I'm going to try and make a product that's going to last for, years and years. I declare it fit for skis. I think everyone needs to just really appreciate a beauty in simplicity. Maybe we just need a really good tool, to get the job done. Oh, absolutely magic. Yeah, it's pretty mad to think that they're all kind of around the world doing their thing. They're as far away as Japan, and then they've been in Antarctica and Greenland and skiing in the Rockies in Canada, and it's quite an amazing feeling. I'll have a bit more of this stuff in it. Once you've got the profile shaped in, that can then be taken into the laminating room and glued with all the subsequent layers to form the sandwich construction of the ski. With this sort of climate shift in Scotland, traditional ski resorts just might not have snow, so the snow might be somewhere else. And if you've got the right kind of ski, you can go and find it, and you can go up on your own terms and be a bit closer to the mountains and nature and everything. Although it looks like it might have some kind of design flair to it, almost everything is purely functional. An object that's so true to its purpose that it ends up being beautiful, but only because it's so useful. This is a completely kind of handmade product. They have in fact, been carved out by hand from lumps of wood, and I think people really appreciate that in my skis, that I'm a real person putting everything into it. Hopefully the enjoyment that I get making them is reflected in that. The feeling of them when people see them and ski on them, kind of connected to the world a wee bit more.
I think you'd agree that's pretty inspirational. I'm not sure if Ewan's actually in the audience. Ewan was going to try and get here today, but he may not have made it. He was at the BBC this afternoon. That film's been shortlisted for quite a few short film for festivals, which is brilliant. And I think it so illustrates so many of the uniqueness of rural enterprise. A young person who's chosen to stay in a rural area with all that craft and skill, and he's exporting. I think his last pair went to New Zealand. Anyway, carry on with you'll be glad to know I'm on number 8 now. Empathy and being non-judgmental. These are two of the values we hold dear at GrowBiz. We can't solve every business problem or challenge our clients have, but we can listen, we can empathise, and we can provide an objective sounding board when they have no one else to share with. We will never judge the quality of someone's business idea or what they're doing with it. The words lifestyle business are banned at GrowBiz. Everyone with a desire to create their own jobs and jobs for others should be respected and supported, no matter how small they want to start. 9, being brave and honest. We're currently facing a challenging set of circumstances, as we've said already, and none of us really know what long-term impact they'll have on us as individuals, communities and businesses. But we need to continue to make the right decisions and keep trying to build the enterprising society that we know is possible. This requires honesty in telling it as it is to our decision makers and fund holders. It's difficult for small rural businesses to get their voices heard, but collectively we can shout louder and demonstrate the power of rural enterprise and its enormous contribution to Scotland PLC. And finally, number 10, community wealth building. The concept of community wealth building has been around for a long time, but it's now a formal part of government strategy. It's all about creating and retaining wealth in local areas with a focus on a fairer share of public and private procurement going to smaller businesses and the creation of stronger local supply chains, which gives us a huge opportunity in rural areas to adopt community wealth building principles to provide local enterprises with more opportunities. This links to our REDS initiative as well, which is about putting rural businesses on the map and joining them up with opportunities. So before handing back to Claire and then John, I'd like just to say a quick few thank yous, first of all, to our supporters and funders, particularly the Rural Economy team in the Scottish Government, who are endlessly encouraging of what we're doing, Perth and Kinross Council, who have consistently supported GrowBiz over its 15 years in recognition of the role that we've been playing in supporting the local rural economy, and the Cairngorms National Park Authority, enabling us to work with hundreds of businesses in the park area. Thanks also to the wide range of supportive stakeholders and partners we work with. We wouldn't be here without them. We also wouldn't be here without GrowBiz's directors and trustees, starting with the original group of committed people who got GrowBiz off the ground in 2007. And I don't want to embarrass them, but there's a few of them here tonight, and I'd just like them to stand up briefly and for us to acknowledge the work they did, because digging your heels in and helping something like this to survive all this time takes a lot of effort. So could the past and current trustees just quickly stand up, please? Don't be shy. GrowBiz, we've also got an amazing team, and we've got a unique staffing structure. We're all self-employed, and most of us have run or are running our own businesses, which gives us a special empathy with our clients. Finally, most importantly, a huge thank you to all the rural businesses we've worked with over the last 15 years. Your support has enabled us to survive and thrive and inspired us through many challenging times. We're looking forward to the next 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. You remain the grand fromage, you do, and 10 out of 10 for that as well, absolutely. Now, it's time to put John Swinney onto that. Well, you're going to sit down, actually, for this, aren't you? And
I think so.
I'm just going to let you go for it. I don't know what you're going to do now, but it's going to be entertaining. And follow that.
Well,
Yeah.
certainly follow that is the right introduction, Claire. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight and to have the opportunity to take part in this conversation about the 15th birthday of GrowBiz. And I think it's very easy, actually, to get to 15 years and think, well, that's, GrowBiz is established, entrenched, it's strong, it's vibrant, it's secure, and all the rest of it. But, having had the privilege, one of the great privileges of my role as a local member of Parliament is that you have the opportunity to work alongside people to make things happen, to try to get things off the ground. And if we go back 15 years, water and uphill comes to mind in summing up the journey of GrowBiz. It wasn't easy, and the leadership and the tenacity of the various people who've been involved in the venture, and I'm glad to see some of the founders here from 15 years ago, and from the thinking that went, and actually it's longer ago than 15 years, because there was, lots. GrowBiz came out of a really interesting and challenging piece of creative thinking that emerged out of East Perthshire around the thinking of an innovator called Ennis Siroli. And it developed into essentially a community-originated business development, wealth generation, creativity venture. It's probably the best way I can sum it up. It's not a very neat summary, but it's a summary. But it was very, very hard work. So the first thing I want to say is to pay tribute to those who had the inspiration and the creativity to try to get this off the ground, and to those who have sustained it over the last 15 years, and particularly Jackie over the last 10 years as the Chief Executive of GrowBiz, has had to steer the organisation through some really challenging moments where money began to look as if it was about to dry up. But then also, even though those difficult moments came along, constantly had a view about how GrowBiz could make more of an impact in society than was currently the case. And I'll come back to say a little bit more about that point in a moment. So first things first, I think it is really important at this 15-year landmark to record the significance of the initiative taken by people to get GrowBiz off the ground, and then the challenge of sustaining that over the course of the 15 years. And I suppose one of my observations on this, and this is where I come at this from the perspective of, I try to be as open-minded as I can about the activities and work of government. I've been a government minister throughout the 15 years of GrowBiz. I was an opposition politician before that. I think one of the things I would have to accept is, despite the best efforts of those trying to take forward enterprise development within Scotland over the 25 years of my parliamentary life, I don't think there's ever been a more successful and connected intervention to encourage community-based entrepreneurial activity than GrowBiz has represented. And I've seen lots of ventures, I've had the privilege of seeing lots of ventures around the country, different ways of working, and there are many, many good ventures that try to do particular things in particular communities. But I think one of the challenges that our enterprise agencies have always faced is how do you, at the same time, fulfill your duties and obligations as an enterprise agency to do your best to create the successful Scottish economy that we all need, but to make sure that happens in localities in our country. And those two things are not the same thing. There's a strategic national perspective that's got to be achieved, and I could sit here and I could rhyme off the fact that Scotland is immensely successful in foreign direct investment, and that's a tribute to our enterprise agencies. But I'd also have to accept that not all of the work that is put in place to support local economic and business development is as successful and as full of impact as it should be. And that's where, and of course, there's two reactions to that. One is that you can get really defensive about it, and I can sit here and rhyme off statistics and say, what are you going on about, because we've got this perfect economy and all the rest of it. Or you can accept that there's a limitation to what the strategic direction of economic interventions can do, and you can actually help facilitate and support the emergence of locally based ventures of the type of GrowBiz, and there are other ventures like this around about the country. And of course, I would contend that a lot of that has been done to make sure that GrowBiz is able to make the impact that has been undertaken. That's involved a lot of support from Perth and Kinross Council. It's involved support from the government. It's involved support from European programmes through the LEADER programme. And I can't tell you how livid and angry and furious and incandescent I am at how difficult that is now because of the loss of those European programmes, because of the stupidity of Brexit. And the replacement programmes, the levelling up funds, the shared prosperity funds, it's a total lot of baloney. You'll all lose the will to live trying to get any money out of these programmes, believe you me. The will to live. So I suggest we concentrate our efforts elsewhere. And that's my optimistic assessment of the situation. You should get me on a bad day about it all. So supporting that community-based endeavour has been important, because what GrowBiz has done is something more than that. Because GrowBiz has not just been a business development venture. It's not also just been a social enterprise development venture. It's not just been a community wealth building venture. It's been a whole lot of things wrapped into one. But fundamentally what it's done is it's listened to people who wanted to do something and has helped them to make it happen. Now that's very difficult to write a business plan for that will get past the public sector. Believe you me, that's difficult. But it's a tribute to Jackie and her team that that's been possible to be sustained. Now, so I'm full of admiration for the journey that GrowBiz has undertaken, the challenges that have been overcome, the tenacity, because GrowBiz is, as I said, it started off in East Perthshire. It has spread its wings delicately and carefully into the Cairngorms National Park, but it's also now beginning to reach out into many other rural parts of Scotland who have heard of what GrowBiz has been able to achieve and want a bit of the action. And I think what I observe, and this is why I'm so delighted the government has been able to give some further financial support to GrowBiz in this financial year and to encourage rural enterprise, is that GrowBiz appears to me to be able to take the model and make it fly in different parts of the country. So it's not just dependent on the chemistry of communities that exist in this locality. it is plugging into the chemistry that exists in a whole range of rural communities, different and diverse, but is managing to plug into the chemistry that exists there. Now, one of the points that Jackie mentioned there, and Claire mentioned it as well, is that we don't all quite know what lies ahead. We know that things are unsteady just now with all the issues, the cost of living issues, the international geopolitical issues. I was saying to a local authority leader yesterday, you know, we're all looking at geopolitical issues just now, which mostly always tend to feel as if they're very, very far away from us and are having no impact on us whatsoever. And we can actually see this one having a real and direct impact on us all already, not just in how we feel, but also in the implications for our economy. And we're facing that in the aftermath of the intensity of a pandemic. I don't say the aftermath of a pandemic because the pandemic is still with us. The intensity of the pandemic, which has changed so many of the ways in which we operate and which give us uncertainty about what lies ahead. Now, that might be an anxious feeling for everybody, and I understand why that is anxious, but there's also opportunity in there. I was here on time tonight because Parliament has not abolished remote voting from the parliamentary procedures that we brought in the pandemic. So because of remote voting, I was able to get here on time tonight, which was a bonus for me. I'm not sure for you, but it's certainly a bonus for me. But also in the course of the pandemic, lots and lots of things about life changed, which I think bring forward opportunities for many rural businesses, provided we get all of the different arrangements and interventions correct. So people became accustomed to shopping online. It doesn't always have to be with Amazon. There's lots of other desirable traders out there other than Amazon. There remains a postal service, there remains a distribution service around the country. And the internet and the ability of direct marketing and profile provides a platform that is, I think, just such an absolutely fantastic platform for the businesses and ventures that are emerging out of all of that disruption of the pandemic. So there's huge opportunities, I think, there. If I go back to the really, really dark and distant past, when I was working properly for a living, I worked in the field of business development. And I worked for a small consultancy company way back in the late 1980s. That's how far back it all goes. The first thing we would suggest to an emerging company was you should get yourself printed a brochure. A brochure. How old-fashioned is a brochure? Because the brochure would only be available to those that you could actually physically get it to. Whereas the technology we now have at our disposal in a completely accessible fashion gets you almost anywhere you need to get to. So there's turmoil, but I suppose what I'm trying to say is there's always great opportunity. And for people who are prepared to move into that area of getting into a situation of perhaps taking more control over their lives and their means of making a living, there'll be no greater ally to have at your side to help you in that journey than GrowBiz. And I certainly want to reassure you tonight of the importance that I attach to supporting ventures of this type and of making sure that the whole concept of rural enterprise is a vibrant part of the way in which we take our economy forward. The last thing I want to say is to address the issue of the interaction with the public sector, because I take that from Jackie's comments and I also hear it from my constituency caseload. And if I think about one particular area and venture, the idea of, the concept of delivering social care in a rural community like this, it could do with, believe you me, a great deal of innovation of the type that social enterprises and GrowBiz type thinking could bring to the party. However, I don't underestimate the difficulty of getting that across the line of a public sector procurement process. That's for people like me to listen carefully and to try to do something about. And that's an important part of what I think lies ahead in the challenges that we face to change the way in which we procure for services so that we can actually create services that meet the needs of individuals, but actually sustain and support local ventures, employment, and the generation of wealth within our own communities. And for rural Scotland, I don't see any downside in all of that. So well done to GrowBiz. Thank you, Jackie, and to your team for all that you achieve, and please continue to do more of it. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Lots in there, lots to unpick as well from Jackie. And just maybe I'm going to tell you all that if you wait for the microphone, it'd be wonderful if you could put your questions to John and Jackie as well. I'm going to let Jackie respond first of all to what you heard from John there, because I think we've all agreed these are very, very testing times. Money's tight for everybody. Every government's got pressures under them. But, Jackie, you know.
I think the first thing I'd want to say is John's tenacity and perseverance when I turn up at his door every 9 months and say, guess what? His support's been really important to GrowBiz and to the rural economy generally. But I think John's right about the opportunities. You know, we're still getting inquiries on a daily basis from people with new ideas, wanting to do things. They don't underestimate the challenges, but you know the energy that's out there, and I think in a weird way COVID unleashed energy, which we didn't fully understand. And we're seeing that still coming out. But I don't think we can also underestimate that the support that's going to be needed and the financial support going forward, and the financial institutions that we deal with being a bit more understanding about what rural enterprises need, etc. But I'm sure there'll be some questions.
What can government do about that? You're saying look at the procurement process, but what can government do?
Well, I think there's two different dimensions to this. One is about ventures like GrowBiz, if I just use that as an example. I think there's got to be space for ventures like GrowBiz to operate. So that means public sector agencies and public authorities and local authorities have got to recognise this is a good thing. So space has got to be left for it to thrive, but there has also got to be financial support to make it happen. The second part of it is a much wider question about procurement. I used the example there, Clare, about social care. If there is a rigidity about our procurement process on social care, then we'll miss opportunities to help ventures that might be different in character from the ones that we're traditionally accustomed to.
And that's not
thrive
necessarily
in
a
the
bad
process.
thing, is it?
Of course it's not. It's absolutely the right thing, because if I think about the communities I represent, I represent the intent. I've got everything. I've got the intensity of Perth city centre, so I've got a city, and then drive for 90 minutes and you're in Kinlochranach. These are the extremities of my constituency, demographically and geographically. And what works in North Muirton does not work in Kinlochranach. So we've got to recognise that and say, well, we might just have to find a different way of delivering social care in Kinlochranach to the way we deliver it in Perth city centre. Nothing wrong with that, because there might be a different and more sustainable model that is much more resource efficient in Kinlochranach. But if we take a one-size-fits-all approach, I say we, I mean public sector land, if we take that one-size-fits-all view, then we're going to end up in sort of putting in place solutions of the type you'll be familiar with in the great city of Glasgow, Clare, and ones that are maybe not quite appropriate for rural Scotland.
How much of an imperative is this for you and the Scottish Government to make sure that the rural economy and these kind of ventures can thrive and not just survive, but thrive? Tell me how important it is to you and to your government.
And absolutely, in fundamental imperative of the National Strategy for Economic Transformation is about regional economic growth. So it's not just good enough for us to say, yeah, Glasgow's doing well and Edinburgh's doing well and even Perth's doing well. We've got to see that the challenges we face are about differences in economic performance in different geographies of the country. So every geography has got to be supported to thrive. And that also means, again, that there will be different solutions in different parts of the country that will be more relevant and more appropriate.
I'm going to throw this open to the floor now. I don't know if anyone's got a question, if they could sit there. Oh, there's somebody there. Can we get a microphone to this lady? You can identify yourself or you can stay completely anonymous, but I know who you are. And I know where you live.
Oh, thanks very much. I'm Carolyn Curry. I'm the Chief Executive of Women's Enterprise Scotland. And I can take you back to your opening remarks about pushing water uphill. I think many of us running enterprise support organisations know what a tough year this is going to be to keep on providing support this year. And I think none more so than GrowBiz, with the news recently that the Rural Entrepreneur Fund has been withdrawn this year, which is a key source of funding. So my question is, how do we provide funding this year to make sure that GrowBiz can thrive and survive and continue, but then going forward, how do we put rural entrepreneurship development onto a much more strategic funding model? You know, you talked about collaboration. All too often, organisations like GrowBiz survive on different pockets of cash that are stitched very well together by Jackie and the Board of Trustees, almost miraculously, some would say, in order to continue. We all know how important this organisation is to rural Scotland. And from my perspective, we hear continuously, I've got 10 years of research at Wes telling me how important support is for women based in rural communities, that point of intersection in rural communities. So, you know, my ask today is, how do we get the funding for this year? How do we move to a much more strategic funding model? And how do we really stitch together empowered communities that can inspire the new generation of rural-based entrepreneurs?
Just the 3 questions then. And really simple.
Well, the first thing is that in this financial year, the government's allocated £130,000 to GrowBiz. And I very much welcome that, and I'm sure that will support the development of GrowBiz's activity. I think, Karen, the issue you raise is then about how do we put enterprise support onto a long-term financial footing. And these are some of the challenges that we wrestle with about in a whole range of different sectors. We wrestle with them in the third sector. We wrestle with them about trying to provide line of sight for a longer term period. And in the spending review, the Finance Secretary made clear her desire to move into much more sustained longer term funding. So there's a lot of operational decisions that have got to be taken underneath those headlines. And I hope out of that process we get to a point where we have much more funding certainty that allows people to plan ahead. The third thing is that I think it's, to be candid about this, it's going to be difficult to envisage a situation where organisations don't have to try to bring together different funding sources. I think I would be, leading you up the garden path if I was to say there's going to be an end to patchwork funding, because I don't see that, because there are too many different sources of funding that have to meet multiple objectives, and therefore they sometimes have to be drawn together in organisations. But what I would say is that we are trying to get to a situation where we don't, where that process is not debilitating for people, that they can get funding certainty, can plan ahead, and as a consequence, the clients that they are supporting and the people who are coming forward with the ideas can feel they're on the receiving end of much more consistent support. Well, I'm sure the clients feel they're on the receiving end of consistent support. The organisations delivering it might feel they can deliver it in a much more consistent and assuring way than is the case up until now.
Thanks for that answer. Anyone else like to ask a question from the audience? All right, this lady around the front. Would you like to tell us who you are or stay anonymous?
Hello, yeah. I don't like the mic.
I think it's working.
I'm Karen Martin. I actually work with GrowBiz. I just wanted to say your comment about what works in cities and doesn't work in rural areas completely resonates with me. I work across the Cairngorms National Park, and I work with a lot of businesses who weren't able to close during COVID because the rules meant that they could stay open and they couldn't access funding to support them if they closed or just stayed open. Had they been in cities, they would have been able to survive, but actually in rural areas they just weren't. But it leads on to another question that I've got. Actually, I talk to a lot of businesses about collaboration, as Jackie was talking about actually, and a lot of them are interested in how they can actually get involved with maybe influencing decisions that are made by Scottish Government. And I'm not really sure how to answer that question, so I'm after a bit of advice.
I think there's, part of what the government sort of listens in a number of different ways to a range of opinions. Sometimes there will be a range of advisory panels set up. Jackie sits on the advisory panels around the National Strategy for Economic Transformation. And I think that's been really vital. So this is on the thinking around the key 10-year National Economic Strategy, and there's a voice of community wealth building right in there, and so there should be. So you'll have advisory panels of that type for particular projects. There will then be various other habitual advisory streams that are available. My colleagues who deal with economic issues will be listening to representatives of businesses on a constant basis, but mainly the business representative organisations. So we will hear from like the Federation of Small Business and these type of organisations on an ongoing basis. And then there will be some of the wider consultation exercises that are undertaken. And of course the challenge with them is that they can be so substantially supported and responded to that it might be difficult to hear some of those opinions. I suppose lastly, there's the importance of making your presence felt on the ground. Jackie mentioned her reasonably regular appearances at my constituency surgeries.
Stalking,
There is another word for it, Clare, and it is stalking, yeah, exactly. But it is your democratic right, Jackie, to come along. You are a constituent. I don't want in any way to put you off, but that is vital. I'm not in any way flippant about it. How do I garner my intelligence about what is going on in Scotland? A combination of my constituency surgeries, gala days, shopping in the supermarket, going for a walk in the village and have my ear bent by somebody. Why not? Because there's a wording on the wall of the Scottish Parliament about the proximity of throwing Chucky stains at members of Parliament in the 18th century, and it's vital that members of Parliament hear what people say. So to the online audience, if that happens to be around the country, if people are touched by the effect of GrowBiz, go and see your member of Parliament, because it helps to stimulate the understanding and appreciation of community-based wealth building and business development ventures. And the more people know about that, the more people will attach importance to it. And
Well, we're good answer, but we're running out of time. If there's anyone else that wants to ask a question for the audience, otherwise I've got some that some people have put in
it's a
advance.
lady over there.
Lady over there, yes.
Hello there, my name's Rebecca McKellar and we've come from Granton-on-Spey today. I would just like to make an observation, and it's to talk about level playing fields between the public and the private sector when competing for the same sector of business. So just as an example, I've had 2 occasions in my life whilst working in the national park of being able to potentially create a business to help to help the economy in the area and to help look after people. The first one was when our daughter was quite young, to create a nursery, and I found that there wasn't a level playing field between what I wanted to do and what the public sector was doing just down the road near the school, and that was just in terms of the number of children you could look after. So it was different and clearly more for the public sector than it was for the private sector. So straight away, that's not a level playing field. So I left that for a bit because I was doing something else and could move on. And then I happened to run a laundrette and cleaning business in the national park for, well, since about 2000, maybe about 15 years now, maybe. And so many of the people that we look after are older people, and their relatives, generally their children, were begging us to form, we're cleaning for them, but begging us to create a care service for them so that we could do further care for their relatives. And when I met with the Care Commission, I was told, you apply, it's going to cost you X number of £1,000s to apply. Oh, but by the way, you're not allowed to operate for the first 6 months. So there in itself, along with all of the other, for the first 6 months, whilst we consider your application, I should say. So I've paid, I've got the staff in place, I'm ready to go. But at that point, I walked away, plus there were a few other bits and pieces that put me off it. So I've considered myself fairly entrepreneurial, and twice I've walked away because I've just thought, this is not worth it. So it's really just to make that observation, because you, sitting where you are, might not have ever experienced that.
I think on the second one, you know, it's a very direct example of the need to make sure that regulatory interventions are appropriate and realistic. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of the Care Commission's exact process they will go through, but it strikes me that that has to be done in a fashion that enables a business to be able to get off the ground without having, you know, a kind of 6-month wait. Feels to me, I can't quite think how you, I actually can't think how you get a business off the ground if you're waiting for 6 months of regulatory approval. So that strikes me as quite a big question mark as to, is that appropriate? When, on your point about an early learning venture, there will be, you know, there is a regular ongoing challenge of interaction between a public policy decision, which is about, which my government has taken, we will expand the provision of early learning and childcare for 3- and 4-year-olds and some 2-year-olds to make it essentially based on the school day. When you take a public policy decision like that and you say to the country, we will provide that, you then delegate to localities how that is delivered. And in some localities, a decision will be taken, well, we'll do that entirely through a public sector approach. The government's view is that should be a mixed market model. So our estimation on the expansion of early learning and childcare was about 75% of it would be provided by the public sector, 25% by the private and third sectors. And you know, that will vary to different extents around about the country. But what would strike me is that for public authorities wanting to see the development of good, sustainable businesses in their locality, the possibility of an early learning venture would be quite an attractive proposition to make that happen. But that then comes down to the point which I conceded in my remarks earlier on, is the public sector, looking at this with an open-minded perspective towards procurement, or is it saying we deliver this and only we deliver this? And I'm not going to sit here and insult your intelligence by saying to you that I think in all circumstances that judgment is exercised in that fashion. I think sometimes public authorities think they've got to do it, as opposed to thinking, well, there might be another solution to it. And when you come down to geographies like Granton and Spey, or some of the localities I represent, looking for a bit of partnership with the private sector or the third sector might actually be a more efficient way of doing it than putting in place the infrastructure for the public sector to do it. And that then means we've got to have a much more open consideration of these questions. But I think the points you raise are absolutely fair and valid points.
Very interesting. And we are getting into the final minutes. I'm probably going to overshoot the runway. But I wanted to ask you very briefly, John, about fuel costs, transport, disproportionately affecting probably everyone here in the rural economy. What can the Scottish Government do to help?
Well, that is a real challenge, Claire, because the issues around, and I'm not, I don't want to sound like a politician that's passing the buck to somebody else, but we essentially have no control over fuel prices or fuel taxation. It's out with our areas of responsibility. So we can make the case to the United Kingdom Government to recognise the challenges, to particularly recognise the disproportionate impact, and to encourage the United Kingdom Government to essentially make interventions that recognise the difference between geographies to try to address that. And we will continue to support a lot of the business development grants that we've put in place. We've just had an Audit Scotland report today on our approach to business development funding during COVID, which has generally said that our partnership and collaboration with local authorities worked effectively during COVID to get funding to businesses to keep them afloat during difficult times. We worked very closely with Perth and Kinross Council, operated a very effective and flexible, in my view, approach to business development funding during COVID. So where the schemes that were being designed nationally couldn't quite reach businesses, Perth and Kinross Council exercised their judgment about what might make a difference, and that was very much welcomed. I saw that at a constituency perspective. But I'm afraid, and this goes back to my point about the global issues. We often feel these global issues that go on around about us are happening and they've got nothing to do with us. That's not the case with this one. This one is right home. It's not as awful and as odious as the situation facing the people of Ukraine, but the implications are here with us on our doorstep, and it's difficult for government to take all those issues away, but we'll continue to make that case to the UK government.
Listen, thank you all for your wonderful questions, and thanks, John, for being good sport and taking them all on, and to Jackie as well. Say thank you to you all for being here. But actually, before we draw things to a close, just one more thing on the to-do list. We're delighted to have had John with us tonight, but of course Jackie Brierton. This is becoming a habit, Jackie. This has happened before. Your colleagues and friends want you to be given due recognition for the massive amount of support and dedication you've provided over the past decade for GrowBiz. It's fair to say you've got a unique perspective on business, big or small. You know the intricacies of how the world of business works. Not surprising, you were a member of the Scottish Government's Advisory Council, which contributed to that fly annoying me, not that at all, to contribute to the recently published National Strategy for Economic Transformation, because, Jackie, you are a very, very precious resource. I'm going to invite Derek to come up now and do something exciting. Who knows?
Here.
Goodness.
I'll kill somebody.
Yes.
After this, I need to get John to make a few presentations.
Oh, I shall, right. Oh, watch you don't fall off the stage. Oh.
Oh, that's...
Hey.
Oh, my goodness. It's modest.
Really commemorate your 10.5 years with GrowBiz, but it's been basic point of it is Jackie, simply put, you make a difference in everything that you do, everything you get involved in. And while you're doing that, you inspire so many people. And a lot of those people are in this room this evening, and they would just like to say thank you. But before I do that, there's one other thank you I would like to give, and I'm sure you'll echo this as well. It is the GrowBiz team that are here tonight, members of the team tonight, have done a tremendous job in relation to putting this event on. But they do a tremendous job in contributing to what GrowBiz has become and developed into under your leadership. So today, I would like to give a special thank you to all the members of the team who are here, but also a special thank you to the members of the greater GrowBiz community around the country. So thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
No, just thank you for everything that you've done over the last 10.5 years, and you're not getting off the hook. We're hoping that we'll be able to continue to do this for many years to come. Many years to come.
Well, thank you, Derek. Maybe not another 10.5 years.
20.
One or two. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's ridiculous, but I might have known not to trust you all. Thank you. I now need to ask John to make some presentations, so thank you, Derek.
Okay.
I don't know why I didn't guess that there was something going to happen, but thank you so much, guys. So that's not the end of the presentations, because there'll be one or two surprise people in the audience. So first of all, we've got 2 retiring board members who have been on the GrowBiz board for the last 5-6 years. First one is our just retired or just stepped down vice chair, Margaret Crombie, who I think, I know that she doesn't get enough credit for being Margaret Crombie. She's also the mother of Amelia, the amazing young entrepreneur over there. But Margaret, if you'd like to come up, just to have something to mark our appreciation.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Would you like to say anything?
I'd just like to say that I've had a fantastic time with the board.
Step forward to the microphone.
Jackie was talking about inspiring and truly working within GrowBiz, both the people who work for GrowBiz, the individual businesses that we meet, but particularly Jackie as well, is incredibly inspiring, and I was in awe every single day of what the organisation achieved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Please be careful. I'm having a heart attack watching it. Oh my God.
The next person is our just stepped down chair, Ian McCormick, who has led the board and led us as an organisation for the last 5 years, Ian. So if you'd like to come up, just a small token of our gratitude.
Okay, well, all I can say is thank you, John, for that. And yes, there was a little surprise, so thank you. Obviously, I concur with everything that's been said about Jackie and her inspiration. I would also like to say that in my 3 years as chair and my 2 years as vice chair, I found it a very inspirational experience. It was great working with GrowBiz at this time when so much work has been done. And I've been very proud to serve as chair. So thank you very much.
I know this one will be a surprise. I'm looking for them. So when I started with GrowBiz, there was just me and a part-time peer support coordinator, Joyce McQuilkin, who couldn't be here this evening. She was here this afternoon. And I needed help because we had so many businesses. So I called on somebody that I knew had a bit of business development experience, a lovely guy called Alan Garrett, who many of you will know in the audience. And Alan's been our longest serving enterprise facilitator, and I'd just like to note that and a little something, because I don't know, Alan, maybe you and I won't be here in 5 years' time. We're both the opposite, the other side of 60 now, but I've just enjoyed working with you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all very much for this very great surprise. I don't know whether I deserve it or not, but there you go. I did say to Jackie earlier on, please don't say I'm your oldest serving, but I probably am the oldest EF in terms of time and age, but my heart is still young, and thank you very much. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you very much.
Finally, as I said earlier, we're really proud to have had our quality standard re-accredited for our mentoring programme from the Scottish Mentoring Network. It literally just happened last week. And I would like to ask Claire Smith, our mentoring manager, to come up so that John can give her our mentoring certificate, the new one that we can put on our wall. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Some more artwork from
Yeah, I know. Thank you. No. Yeah, surprises all round. Thank you so much. No, it's a great privilege to be up here receiving this for the second time. So there's all of you in the gallery who are part of the success of this, and all of you in the floor. So thank you so much. But I must draw reference, maybe shouldn't draw reference, to one individual who twisted my arm many moons ago, and she's in the gallery, to chum her to the first mentor training, where I became a mentor myself, and here I am today, standing doing all of this. So thank you, the lady up there in the gallery. She knows who she is. And thank you to you all, and yeah, everyone else on that side of the gallery. So thank you.
I'll just hand back to Claire to say goodbye, and a huge thank you to Claire for coming along this evening. She only got back from New York 2 days ago, so she's got over her jet lag.
Hearts are bleeding, aren't they?
Oh. But, you know, tomorrow's the start of another enterprising day. We're having a full GrowBiz meeting, the first face-to-face meeting we've had in 2 years of all the team, which will be fantastic. Thanks so much to everybody that's come both this afternoon and this evening. I think it's been worth celebrating, but we've got a huge amount of work to do, so don't get too complacent. The hard work starts tomorrow. Thanks a lot.
You've been warned. Thank you so much. I just love coming to these events. It totally gladdens my heart, and I'm buzzing for days afterwards. I'm not kidding. I absolutely love coming to this part of the world as well. Always bumping into you, John, which is lovely.
Always.
And Jackie, how wonderful to be here and to celebrate a 15th birthday and anniversary for GrowBiz. Thank you all to all those who joined us online. I don't know if they're still online with us or not, but to you guys for coming along. And once again, keep up the good work. It's amazing stuff what you're doing. Thank you very much for coming, and safe home.